Okay, for our next set of notes, we're going to be on page 116 in the notebook, and we're going to be talking about two-way tables. So we're going to put in the definition for a two-way table, and a two-way table is a visual representation of the possible relationships, between two sets of data. So let's look at our first example. So the table below shows the results from a survey where students were asked if they play an instrument and if they play a sport. So find the sum of each row and column, then answer the questions that follow. So this table, if I look at it, they asked students if they played an instrument or played a sport, and there's 4 different pieces of data you have here. If they play an instrument and play a sport, if they play an instrument and don't play a sport, or if they don't play an instrument and play a sport, or if they do neither. So we're going to fill in these totals here. So let's do that right now. So if I look at my first column of plays a sport, 33 plus 9 is 42. My second column does not play a sport. 19 plus 14 is 33. So when I go to add, this is going to be the total number of students. When I add 42 and 33, I get 75. When I go to add up the first row, plays an instrument, 9 plus 14 is 23. Does not play an instrument. The second row, 33 plus 19 is 52. And same thing, 23 plus 52, when I add up this third column, is 75. So either way, the total number of students being asked these questions are 75 students total. So now let's look at the questions. The first question they ask, A, is how many students play an instrument? So how many students play an instrument? So let's see. Plays an instrument. I've got overall 9 plus 14, 23. That's a total number of students who play an instrument. It doesn't ask me anything about sports, so it's 23. For B, how many students play an instrument and play a sport? So they play an instrument and they play a sport. So these two things together, it's going to be 9. C, how many students do not play a sport? So let's look. This is over here. Does not play a sport. It's going to be this total number of students here. It doesn't matter whether they play an instrument or not. So it's going to be 33. And then how many students play a sport but do not play an instrument? So they play a sport, but they don't play an instrument. So it's going to be this guy. So plays a sport, does not play an instrument, gets me to this number of 33 students. And then how many students were surveyed? Well, we kind of answered that at the beginning when we said that there were 75 altogether. Okay, so before we move on to the next question, another way to look at these relationships is percentages. So over on the left-hand side, we're going to talk about the percentages. We're going to answer these same questions again, but we're going to think about what percentage. So for A, if I look at A again, what percentage of students play an instrument, okay? So for A, the percentage is going to be how many students play an instrument, 23, divided by the total, and then I'm going to multiply that by 100 to get my percentage. So in my calculator, if I do 23 divided by 75 times 100, I get 30.66. So I'm going to round that. It comes out to be 30.66. I'm going to round that to 31%. B, I'm going to look at percentage. So what percentage of students play an instrument and play a sport? So 9 students out of 75, and then I'm going to multiply that by 100. When I put that in my calculator, 9 divided by the total, 75, times 100, gives me 12%. So when I go over here, this is really 31% of students. This is 12% of students. So for C, how many students do not play a sport? Well, there were 33. I'm going to divide that by the total and multiply it by 100 to get the percentage. So 33 divided by 75 times 100 is going to be 44% of students. So I'm going to put that over here, 44%. And even though D is a different question, I know that 33 students is 44%. So D is going to be the same as C. For E, how many students were surveyed? Well, 75 is the total, so the percent is 100%. So I don't really need to answer for E. There's not going to be a percentage because that's the total number of students. So when you need to find the percent of students, it's going to be the part divided by the total times 100 when you're asked to find the percent as opposed to just the number of students. So let's look at the next example. This one, they didn't fill in the numbers. They gave you the situation, so they're telling you everything, and then they want you to fill this in. So let's read through this. Sydney randomly surveyed students at her school and found that 72 students ride the school bus, and 37 of those students buy lunch from the cafeteria. There are 19 students that do not ride the bus, but buy lunch from the cafeteria. 9 students do not ride the bus or buy lunch from the cafeteria. So I would say this is pretty confusing. She's got 72 students that ride the school bus. Then she's got 37 of those students buy lunch from the cafeteria. There are 19 students that do not ride the bus, but buy lunch from the cafeteria. And 9 students do not ride the bus or buy lunch from the cafeteria. So we got to figure out, where do these 4 numbers go in all this data? So let's see if we can figure this out. So let's work on that. So let's start with 72 students. So she found that 72 students ride the school bus. So if we look at our data table, rides the bus, total number of students, 72 students ride the bus. I'm going to put my 72 right there. So there's my 72 students that ride the school bus. 37 of those, it says, buy lunch from the cafeteria. So buys lunch from the cafeteria, rides the bus, 37 students. So I'm going to fill that one in right there. So that one's set. So now there are 19 students that do not ride the bus, but buy lunch from the cafeteria. So they don't ride the bus, but they do buy lunch from the cafeteria. So that is going to be this space right here. So that's 19 students. I figured that one out. And then 9 students do not ride the bus or buy lunch from the cafeteria. So 9 students do not ride the bus and do not buy lunch from the cafeteria. So that's going to go right there. So now I can fill in the rest of the table. So the easiest one to fill in when I look at this is this column right here, does not ride the bus. I just have to do 19 plus 9. So 19 plus 9 is 28. Then the next easiest for me to fill in is to go across here and say, okay, what's 72 plus 28? That's 100. And then this one here should be pretty straightforward. 37 plus 19 is going to give me 56. So now to fill in this space, what do you add to 56 to get 100? Or what's 100 minus 56? That's going to be 44. And then for my last missing piece, I can either go this way and say 44 minus 9, or I can say 72 minus 37. But either way, I am going to get 35 when I'm done. So now I've got this table all filled out. Everything is all set. So now let's look at the questions they're asking me. So the first one, how many students buy their lunch? Okay, so buys their lunch from the cafeteria. It looks like, I don't care if they ride the bus or don't ride the bus, the total number of students that buy their lunch, I got 56 students here. So it's going to be 56. But what's the percentage? Well, the percentage is going to be 56 divided by 100 total students times 100. That's going to be 56%. Because they've got a total of 100 students, this particular step right here, I don't really need to do. So these percentages just match up because of this 100 total students. So let's go to the next one. How many students ride the bus but do not buy their lunch? Ride the bus do not buy their lunch. So I am coming into this spot right here. It's going to be 35, and that's going to be 35%, right? Then for C, how many students do not ride the bus? So let's see, do not ride the bus, doesn't really say anything about their lunch. So I'm just going to come down here, and it's going to be 28. And that just happens to be 28% of students. And then how many students do not buy their lunch? Okay, students do not buy their lunch from the cafeteria. So if I look at this, it doesn't matter whether they ride the bus or not. I'm just looking at this total, so it's going to be 44. And that's 44%. And E, how many students were surveyed? Well, 100, right? They tell us that. We know that because it's right here, the total. So that is having to read and construct, but then answer the same kinds of questions as the first question. So now we are going to go to the next page, and we've got a third table to do. And this question's got a lot going on. Adam surveyed 120 random students at his middle school. So 120 students were surveyed and asked them if they plan to attend the school musical. Of the 80 students who responded that they are attending the musical, so going to the musical, 80, it says 15 are 7th graders, so 15 goes in that spot. Of the 46th grade students surveyed, so there's 46th grade students, 13 said they do not plan on going, so 13 are not going. And then only 10 8th graders surveyed do not plan on attending the musical. So if you look at not going to the musical, there's 10 8th graders. So now our job is to fill in the rest of these spots. So if I look at the first row, I have 13 not going to the 40 are 6th graders, 13 are not going, so how many are going? So 40 minus 13 is 27. If I look at the first column, there's 80 students going to the musical. I have 27 and 15. That's 42 students. So I need 38 more to get to 80. So these three numbers added together are going to equal 80. If I look at the second column, not going to the musical, I have 13 and 10 is 23, and I need 17 more to get to a total of 40. And now I'm just going to add up 15 and 17 in the second row and to get 32 total 7th graders, and I'm going to add up 38 and 10 to get 48 total 8th graders. So I filled in all my numbers in my two-way table. So part A asks me how many 8th graders plan to attend the musical. So if I look at my 8th graders, I know that 38 are going, 10 are not, so the answer is going to be 38 are going, planning on going. For part B, how many 7th graders were surveyed? So the total number of 7th graders, if I look across that row, 7th graders, is 32. There are 32 7th graders going. And then how many 6th graders plan to attend the musical? So 6th graders going to the musical is going to be 27. So I'm going to put 27 there. Now I'm going to figure out these percentages, and these are going to be a little bit, because the total number of students is 120, that's the total I'm using, I have to do this math. So 38 8th graders that plan to attend the musical out of 120 total students times 100. So what's that when you put that in your calculator? 38 divided by 120 times 100 equals 31.66. So I'm going to round that to 32%. So this is about 32% of students. For this one, 32 out of how many total students? 120. And then I multiply that by 100. I'm going to get 32 divided by 120 times 100. It's 26.66. I'm going to say that's about 27%. So 27% are 7th graders. And then my last one that I'm going to figure out is percentage, 27 divided by the total, 120 times 100 equals, do that on my calculator, I get 22.5% for how many 6th graders plan to attend the musical. So in your notes, you need to have these percentages, because that's gonna be a question that you're gonna have to answer for homework. So not only figure out the numbers in the table, but then figure out the percentages. And we will do relative frequency next.